Matthew Hebebrand, how are you tonight? Good to see you.
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, it's our pleasure. I'm glad that you found the time to come on board with us. I'm just trying to clear my mind a little bit. I don't know about the rest of you guys,
Yeah,
but that whole
that's something
documentary
that's
thing was
kind of hard
just,
to follow up on that.
yeah. I know it's not.
I will
It's not going
say,
to be
I
easy.
think it is
Okay?
important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would like to mention Corey Comparatore. As a former prosecutor, listening to all that, I'm putting together some of the evidence, but I'm also thinking about the comparatores. One of my main things as a former prosecutor was looking out for the victims and representing the victims. And that's a dimension of this, that the politics of it and the importance of our president, Donald Trump, and getting to the root of an attempted assassination. We tend to sometimes overlook some of the people who are impacted by this, namely the one person who was killed and the wife and daughters he left behind. So I hope all your viewers take that time to continue to pray for them, because they deserve answers to that as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they absolutely do. And by the way, if you're in the chat and you want to chat about something, go ahead and we will bring you into the conversation. Be glad to do that. We can forget that that Corey Compatori or whatever, I forgot his name, but he died. He was killed. He was shot in the head protecting his family. So he actually died as a hero. But we forget that somebody lost their life on this. There's so many questions I have. I didn't want to prolong it any longer. But as you go through and think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute. Where was Corey at when he got shot? He wasn't directly behind Trump. He's off to the side in the bleachers. You have that piece of equipment that gets hit right in the hydraulic hose or whatever. And boom, it's spraying the water in a different direction than where Crooks is at when he's firing. So what's going on, And are these people such bad shots? I mean, even if you are a second shooter, you would think that all the shots would be coming right at Trump or right around Trump. All the people right behind him are the ones who should be dead. But it's just so many questions. Wow. Well, I want to get to you right now. Let's change gears here. So you have a lot of titles here. You're a mediator for Lake County Juvenile Court. You're a magistrate over the juvenile delinquency, traffic, and unruly cases. Assistant prosecutor for Ashtabula County. What else? You co-authored an amicus brief for the United States Supreme Court. You went to college in Marshall College of Law in Cleveland, and you live in Painesville. You have a wife and 3 kids.
Yes, I was actually one of Professor Plechnik's first students. When he first started teaching, I was a second-year law student and was in one of the first classes he taught.
Is that right? So I got to get you on here for a second. You take a bow for that. So you were one of his one of his professors.
It was my first year teaching at Cleveland State. I had taught at Georgetown University in the past, but it was my first semester at CSU. And Matt was an extraordinary student. I don't think I'm telling his colleagues anything they wouldn't already intuit from working with him. He's extraordinarily bright, and it's amazing to see him administer the law and justice at such a young age, including, by the way, serving on the Board of Trustees for Lakeland Community College. I'm proud to say that as commissioner, I voted to appoint him.
Excellent. Well, Matt, let's get into some of what you wanted to talk about tonight. And there were 2 different topics. One was the Ohio Constitution, and then there's also the fact that we're going to be celebrating our 250th birthday of America coming up, and you have a lot to do with that as well. So I guess we'll start with the Ohio Constitution, if you'd like. And what is it?
So I'd like to take a step back. I'm sure all of your viewers are familiar with the concept of federalism and what it means, but there's a subcomponent of that of judicial federalism. And we all know about the United States Constitution, and most of us, at least your viewers, know the Bill of Rights and what's in there. But we also have each of the 50 states has a state constitution. And Ohio has a constitution that was, we're operating under one that was first ratified in 1851. There's an earlier one that we had replaced in 1802. But when the United States Constitution was first ratified, and when the Bill of Rights was first ratified, that Bill of Rights was meant to protect citizens against the federal government. The citizens at the time understood that the states would protect its citizens through their own state constitutions. And a lot of the judicial activism that we see at the national level, part of it can be attributed to a lack of enforcement of our own state constitutions. So when we're talking about enforcing certain national rights, we can overlook the rights that we have protected in our own state constitution. And so that's part of the something that I've been doing a lot of research on. I've just finished drafting a law review article that I hope to have published on it.
Let me ask a quick question here. We have the Ohio Constitution, we have the U.S. Constitution. So the U.S. Constitution would take precedence over the Ohio Constitution, right? Is there ever a time when it doesn't, or is it just always?
It always does, but remember that the U.S. Constitution also has, in regards to the federal government, it's a government of limited powers. And then in that Bill of Rights, there's that 9th and 10th Amendment that reserve powers to the people and to the states respectively. And so there are some things that we can have the state be the primary agent of certain actions. We talk about things like education, for example, that the only power that the federal government has over education is in regards to the money that the federal government gives to the states. And so there's a lot above and beyond that, where if you're filing a federal claim on something, you might not be able to get too far. That you might have a federal judge that say you only get this, and you're asking for something else. That something else you may be able to get under the state constitution. Actually the chief judge for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Jeffrey Sutton, has wrote about this. He's talked about it as being in a basketball game and getting 2 free throws. That the national constitution, a national constitutional claim is 1 free throw, and we have a lot of litigants out there who file claims just under the federal constitution, and they're giving up that second free throw.
So. Yeah, maybe we can go ask you a couple questions on this too, because we're trying to do, Brian is trying to get together and change the Ohio Constitution when it comes to property taxes. And we know that in the last few years, there's been a lot of changes to the Ohio Constitution. So how does that, if you do change the Ohio Constitution, how does that affect all the other laws that were in effect with the Ohio Constitution prior to that,
It's something that is an active conversation in Ohio right now. I'm sure a lot of your viewers are thinking about the recent constitutional changes in regards to abortion and women's reproductive rights. That was something that we have a whole bunch of laws and regulations on the books that were passed regarding abortion, that then a lot of that was put into place under the framework of Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, 2 United States Supreme Court cases that dealt with abortion. And then that was actually the case that I had an amicus brief as an attorney for Lawyers for Life. I wrote an amicus brief in the Dobbs decision, which then overturned Roe versus Wade. But the response in Ohio was to pass a constitutional amendment that purportedly protects women's reproductive rights. And there are a lot of people who argue it goes beyond what was legal under the Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey framework. And so that's something that's being litigated right now, is what's the effect of those laws that were put on the books before those amendments. We've got some judges out of Hamilton County who say none of them are good anymore. We've talked about preliminary injunctions on the national stage. We've got a couple of judges in Columbus and Cincinnati who think they can institute statewide injunctions in this state, and that's one of the ones that they've. So this is something that it's really important that people have an understanding of what the Ohio Constitution provides. Again, you think of our Bill of Rights, and there are 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights that we think of as being our rights giving. Ohio's Constitution has Article 1. We start our Constitution outlining all of our rights, and there are 22 sections rather than 10, and a lot of those sections give multiple rights per section.
So you wanted to focus on Article...
question,
yeah, one second. You wanted to focus on Article 1, Section 16. Is that correct? What is that?
And the reason for that is just this past term, the Ohio State Supreme Court decided a case called State Ex Rel. Cincinnati Enquirer versus Bloom. And that was a case that dealt with this provision of the Constitution because it says all courts shall be open. And the Cincinnati Enquirer was trying to get courts records in a juvenile case, a case in which after the case had been prosecuted, the juvenile had passed away, and they were trying to get into the records of that case. It was a manslaughter based case, so they were trying to figure out what actually happened in this shooting incident. And in that case, it had been automatically sealed, and the state had basically said that our open courts provision means the same thing as what the United States Supreme Courts talk about court access under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. They had done that just honestly, in my opinion, because they were lazy. It's much easier for a judge, instead of making up their own test on a constitutional issue, or to go back and actually do the research to do some originalism and see what the founders and the citizens of the state, when this constitutional provision first came into effect, what they understood it to mean. It's much easier to go to the big guys in the United States Supreme Court, try and find something that's analogous there. And the Supreme Court has a line of cases about accessing court records under the First Amendment. And they said, we're just going to apply that test, even though our Constitution has a directly applicable provision about the courts. And it says all courts shall be open. And now that we have a panel of state Supreme Court judges or justices who are all influenced by originalism to one degree or another, they were willing to take a second look at this and basically say that, it was wrong for them as justices who had sworn an oath not just to the United States Constitution, but to the Ohio Constitution, to basically subordinate the Ohio Constitution to whatever the United States Supreme Court says that the U.S. Constitution means. And they actually conducted an original analysis of Article 1, Section 16. And so the research that I've done is because there's more to that provision than just saying all courts shall be open. There's a right to remedy provision. There's a due course of law subcomponent of that. And there's also a provision regarding justice being neither delayed nor denied. So it's almost like a speedy trial provision, and also a fair process provision.
Okay, hang on a second. Brian's got a question. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Hello, Matt. Would you agree that the Ohio Constitution has been changed 177 times, if I remember that number correctly? Is that correct?
I think you've got the number right. It's 176, 177. It's somewhere around there. And this was part of our statewide discussion a couple years ago. Should we make it harder to change the Ohio Constitution? And unfortunately, a lot of that conversation got wrapped up in the conversation regarding abortion, and that amendment to the Constitution to make it harder to amend got shut down nearly at the same rate as the abortion amendment was passed. And so I think we did ourselves a disservice in terms of actually having a conversation as citizens of this state on what the Constitution means. And why has it been amended so often? And what are, are there other ways we can address our Constitution without necessarily amending it so many times?
Hmm.
Well, it just seems to me that the legislators are just not doing their job. If they, why don't they do it through the Ohio Revised Code as opposed to the Constitution? Because changing it that many times, you wonder, does the Constitution today, it does not bear any resemblance to what the original Constitution was all about. So what is what's the foundation, of our state, and what do we really believe? But I think the legislators probably like going through the route of changing the Constitution, because then they don't have to be held to account for any votes.
Yeah. Well, let's hang on one second. Let's pull up the chat. Let's ask the chat. Maybe you can answer this, Matt, and you can answer Brian's question. But it says, it's from Angela Jill Marlowe. Then you have local ordinances and resolutions in these local nonpartisan political subdivisions like villages and townships under home rule, a third layer. And what do we have here? We have amended our Ohio Constitution over 200 times. It has become more of a suggestion. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, she may be right in the number of attempts to change the Constitution. I think the actual number, I think Brian had the actual number of times it was successfully amended, but there have been many more than 200 attempts to amend the state Constitution. And one of the most famous changes to our Constitution was the implementation of home rule. And many of your audience members, as conservatives, may believe that the government that governs locally governs best, and that was one of the reasons why in that era you had kind of a cross-partisan support of that home rule amendment. That more power locally is something that's good. But there's also a lot of scholarship up there that I haven't gotten into myself, but maybe interested to your viewers, in terms of an original understanding of home rule, that it didn't really completely supplant the power of the state legislature to govern on certain issues, and that what it basically allowed cities and villages and even counties with home rule authority to do is basically create for themselves how they wanted the actual organ of government to operate. Something like, do you want an elected city mayor? Do you want a city council, city manager type of government? Do you want multiple elected executives or a single executive? Those were all things that each municipality could determine on its own. But it didn't necessarily mean that every village and every city and every county could just make up whatever law it wanted. That basically the state legislature has the ultimate authority on passing laws that affect our entire state.
So I want to follow off. The magistrate's point, the trustee's point. It is true that cities and villages have home rule under the Ohio Constitution, and townships can actually adopt limited home rule, but counties cannot. Counties are simply creatures of the state and do not have the means or the authority to make law. That's why counties govern by resolution, whereas you'll see cities and villages adopt ordinances and resolutions. Ordinances actually are the law. Resolutions are merely an official action by the body. And so county commissioners only operate under the Ohio Revised Code by resolution, whereas cities and villages have the privilege of passing ordinances and making local laws. And I know this as a former councilman on the one hand and a county commissioner today on the other. But the point is certainly well taken that the real test for home rule, so even if you are a city or a village that can potentially trump state law, that only applies for quote-unquote local issues. For matters of statewide concern, the state still has the power to to preempt local legislation. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. The state always argues that everything impacts the whole state. The city says, nope, it's just local. And I can tell you that the trend in the courts lately has been to side with the state. And so you see a real encroachment in the last 10, 20 years of the state legislature on home rule. And your mayors, your managers, your city council people, they're none too happy about it.
You're right on that. So, if there was something, if we want to comment on that, go ahead, Matt. Just also wondering if there was something, is the Ohio Constitution really fulfilling what it was created to do? I mean, if we're changing it 200 times, it's kind of like, what does it become? And what should it be? Because it's not the Ohio Revised Code, it is our Constitution. What should be in there then?
Yeah, and I think that's where it goes back to, what did the people who first created the Ohio Constitution, what did they have an understanding of what it means? What did it mean to them? Because we inherited that from them, right? And their understanding of a constitution was, one, it kind of defined what the government was. What made up the government? Is it a legislature with one, with one house, with two houses? Is it an executive with a single executive, a unitary executive, multiple executive individuals or bodies? Is it a judicial system with one court, with multiple courts? That's kind of the nuts and bolts of government piece of it. But the other point of a constitution is that it also constrains the government. It tells the government, because unlike the national government, which we have a constitution that has limited enumerated powers to the federal government, the state constitutions have plenary power. And so our forebears had an understanding that wasn't correct, that they shouldn't have all power, and that the power that the states have a right to exercise need to be limited in terms of certain rights that individuals have, and those need to be spelled out. Because we saw that was, and this is a way to segue into America 250, that the British Parliament was not honoring the rights that the American colonists had, the rights that they just believed that were understood on both sides of the Atlantic and were being consistently violated.
Hey, Matt,
so there's this understanding that we need to write this down, and we need to make it enforceable. So that's what I see as our state constitution being. And that's why I believe it's important for people to have an understanding of what are those rights in that Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution. And what does Section 16 mean when it says all courts shall be open and to all individuals have a right to remedy to any injury done in their person, their goods, their property, their reputation in the due course of law, and that justice shall be administered without delay or denial. What does that mean for people? How often are people not getting their in court and they're waiting years for their case to be decided? Is that delay under Section 16 of Article 1 of our state constitution? Are we constitutionally administering our court system right now? Are there certain injuries to people's property, to their person, or even to their reputation that the state legislature is violating by limiting the remedies that people can seek under our Ohio Revised Code? Are there aspects of our state law that are unconstitutional because they don't allow people a real and adequate remedy? And those are the things that people need to have an understanding of, so that when they have an injury and they want to a redress, instead of going to the federal courts and saying this is unconstitutional under the national constitution, they may actually have more rights under the state constitution.
Gotcha. I'm going to throw John back on here, John. So you taught him well, by the way.
Very proud of Matt.
Very proud. Yes, you should be. Is there anything, because we're going to go on, I want to get on to the America 250 here, but was there anything you wanted to add to what Matt just said? Or
I would just say to your original question, when would the state constitution come into play when the federal constitution does not? In many cases, the federal constitution sets the bare minimum standard that the state cannot go below, but there's nothing preventing a state constitution from giving more rights. And that's why Matt says you might actually have more rights to vindicate under state law than federal law, and education is the perfect example. My first published article, Equal Access to Public Education, makes just that point, that there is no fundamental right to education at the national level, but many states, including North Carolina, which I focused on in that piece, do have rights in the state constitution to education. And that's just one of myriad examples where you might have more robust rights, protections under the state constitution than the federal. So it's not that they conflict, it's that the federal constitution often sets the baseline and states may choose to afford even more protection. But at the end of the day, remember, our founders gave us a very pithy document. The Ohio Constitution is a book by comparison, and so I think that Matt is advising you well that you should seriously look to what your rights are under state law, because in many cases you're going to see a far more specific provision in the Ohio Constitution than in the U.S.
Yeah, very good. And if you guys don't mind, Matt, if you don't mind,
Joe, can I ask one question of
sure,
our two lawyers here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you define what is really the role of government?
So,
If you
Should
Brian,
government be involved in public
John
education?
Adams, he would.
Well, go ahead, Matt. We'll give you the shot there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to quote John Adams. I believe he's the one who said that the purpose of government is to help ensure the greatest happiness for the greatest number. And what that essentially is talking about is creating, an atmosphere in a way for people to flourish, because we can't do all things for all people as a government. That's not the proper role of government. But if you provide a justice system, if you give people the sense of security through adequate, police and other public security measures, and provide a way for people to educate themselves, if not by the state, that people can flourish. And that's what I see as the role of government.
I think, like most conservatives, I take a minimalist role in what government should do. I'm reminiscing on John Stuart Mill's harm principle, that you should only intervene and limit someone's free will if and to the extent they're harming others. You should only intervene to prevent harm. So if I'm off on my own, doing my own thing, government should not be involved in my choices. But when my choices have negative externalities, I'm dumping garbage on my neighbor's lawn, I'm shooting people, I'm dangerous to others, that's where government should intervene. Because the alternative is the Wild West, where everyone intervenes on their own behalf. So I think the harm principle is a pretty good articulation of the role of government, that government should leave you alone unless you're hurting others. And that brings you to the broader role of government, that we need to have police, we need to have military, we need to have strong borders, because all those relate to preventing harm. Unfortunately, we've seen mission creep in government, where it's become everything from our overlord to our nanny. Unfortunately, the big brother state isn't even scary anymore. It's basically just describing an airport. We've gone well beyond that. Anything you could have imagined in 1984, we have gone well beyond. And many people think that is the role of government, because that's what government is doing. But that's precisely why we're seeing society so fragile at this point. When someone else is responsible for and does everything for you, you start to lose your own capacity to do it for yourself. And I think that's why we're seeing such difficulty in America today, because the government's been doing so much for so many, they're incapable of doing for themselves. And when the government is incapable of intervening, it leaves a lot of people helpless.
Yeah, Commissioner and Matt, would you agree with my statement that What I have seen in my observations of, in Lake County and in state government, that the public sector has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for all of these services that they're providing.
I don't disagree, Brian, but I think your critique becomes all the more scathing when you realize that Lake County is probably in the umpteenth top percentile of conservative run governments, whether you're looking at city, village, township government, libraries, the county as a whole. You see principally conservative Republicans in those roles, and I would say they're doing better on average than their colleagues in other counties in Ohio and in most other states, which is not a defense and not to say that you're wrong. Quite the contrary, I think the government is too big in Lake County and in Willoughby Hills, but at the same time, I believe we're doing better than most of our competitors on that margin, which tells you that the wider world is out of control.
Yeah, government has definitely got out of control. No question about it. I'm going to switch gears here tonight, and we're going to talk about America is celebrating its 250th birthday coming up here. And but before I do that, I've got some breaking news, and I got to get this out over. This is hot off the press, okay, right off the cell phone here. Has nothing to do with the Ohio Constitution, but I thought it was important. Brian, you might find this important as well. The Steve Miller Band is canceling their entire 2025 tour due to climate change. Did you guys hear about that? Their entire 2025 tour is being canceled.
Well, we're going to miss
Steve Miller. Steve, you guys don't even know who Steve Miller is. He's so old.
Joe, I think he just found out that winter is one of the 4 seasons and it's too cold for him.
It could be. Now, somebody claims there is this rumor out there that they've had declining ticket sales, but that ain't really the truth. The truth is climate change. They don't want to do any more climate. It's so crazy. Everything is beyond crazy. All right, Matthew.
I have to tell you, Joe, when Mayor Bibb and NOACA tried to pass a climate change resolution a few years ago, I remember saying, this is a ridiculous derailing of our efforts to actually work on roads and bridges and fairly allocate that money to communities. I said, I believe in God, not Captain Planet. And I remember everyone went spastic, in particular the mayor of Cleveland Heights, who's actually being recalled right now.
Right.
They were like, you're saying I believe in a fictional blue man who flies around. How dare you? I said, well, you're taking all of this on faith. You're not willing to have a discussion. You're not willing to consider evidence. That's not the scientific method. That's religion, and that's fine. You can believe in Captain Planet if you want to, but I believe in God, not Captain Planet. And the Plain Dealer ran not 1, not 2, but 3 front-page stories on it because they were so furious, and they were trying to punish me. And it's like, no, you don't understand. I want you to run a story every day on the front page saying that I don't believe in climate change. Please.
Well,
and here's my way of being able to segue this conversation back to America 250, because 250 years ago, at about this time, the Continental Congress was adopting a whole bunch of different resolutions that were directed towards the American people, resolutions directed towards King George and his parliament, resolutions directed towards the British people. And one of the things that they claimed in nearly all of those documents, one of the things they were so proud of, was our natural resources here in this country. That at this time, when they still wanted to maintain reconciliation with Great Britain, stay part of that British Empire, one of the kind of threats that they used was, if you push us too far, beware, because we have the capability of being independent. Look at our natural resources. And that's something that those founders didn't intend just for them at that time. They intended for us to enjoy in perpetuity. So as inheritors of not just that the independence that those founders gave to us 250 years ago, we also need to be grateful for all the resources that they knew that this country had. and use it. Use it for our continued American independence.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute, Matt, because if we go back to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, there were 56 signers. And I was reading where a lot of them were killed, tortured, families were destroyed. It's incredible how many of them had misfortune. And this is after we actually won. I mean, we won the war, but they were still victims because the British went after them. It's amazing. And most of them were very wealthy, and they died in poverty. We don't know the names of most of these men, these 56 signers. We know a few, like Ben Franklin and that, but John Hancock. But we don't know the vast majority of them. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I can address it briefly. You mentioned Benjamin Franklin, and Benjamin Franklin is the one who famously said around the time that the Declaration was being signed that surely if we don't hang together, we shall all hang separately. These were men who understood that what they were doing was treacherous. It was at that time period, people still had a kind of personal understanding of government relations, that they had an understanding that they were subjects to the king in Britain. And even though Parliament had most of the political authority at that time, there was still a personal bond between citizens and subject, between the colonists and the king. And so betraying that by declaring independence, they were not only severing the political bonds, but that bond between all of them and the king, which under the law was a betrayal that would leave them, would necessitate their being hanged, necessitate all of their forfeiting all of their property. When they have that line in the Declaration about dedicating their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, that was serious. That wasn't just rhetoric. All of them, the British could just come in and take their property, and they did. There's almost an understanding, because we won and because of the superpower that America is now, it almost is taken for granted the risks that the founders were taking. And people forget that Britain had such a tight control throughout the 7 years of that conflict, that Great Britain ended up controlling all of our ports, controlled, New York City, had taken over Philadelphia. The Continental Congress had to change its meeting location 3 or 4 times to keep getting away from where the British were controlling the territory. People have a vague idea of Valley Forge, but it's really hard unless you've actually served in the military or maybe done some extreme camping to really know the hardships that the Continental Army faced during that winter. And that is something that I think we, as a country, we need to talk about, because we can have a sense of gratitude then for what those men did and what they stood up for. And I'm hoping that as part of our national celebration, those other names, the names that are forgotten, the names of the founders who were killed, the names of the founders who lost everything, all of their land, all of their property, who had family members die, who lost their sons who were, or brothers who were fighting in the Continental Army, that by having an understanding of all the hardships that they bore, we can be more grateful for the land of prosperity that we live in today.
What are you doing with the America 250 now, specifically?
Yeah, so Commissioner Plechnik is actually the chair of the local county committee here in Lake County. I'm also working with Lakeland to make sure that Lakeland Community College has some events to participate over the course of next year. And on a personal basis, I've started a little YouTube page to go through events as they come down the pike, commemorating things from 250 years ago. That YouTube page is Remembering America 250. So if you search YouTube, you should be able to find it there. And just trying to get the word out. One of the things that I know Commissioner Plechnik is is focused on with our local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, is going through and identifying, well, we already have them all identified. All of the men who served in the Continental Army, who then after the war came here and settled in Lake County and were buried here. And we're trying to start an effort. The Men of Honor Club locally is also involved in this, of trying to refurbish some of those grave sites and grave markers, so that people can actually come and honor the men who actually fought for our independence and then started us off here in Lake County. These are guys who not only risked their lives 250 years ago, but then risked it all again by traveling out. Most of these men came from New England, because this was all part of the Western Reserve of Connecticut. They came here and they risked it all to start our community here.
Very good.
To start our state.
Now you're the chairman, huh? You're going to be chairman of Lake County as well, as what Matt was just saying. So what do you got up your sleeve with this?
So for starters, who knows the official term for America's 250th birthday? We had the centennial, we had the bicentennial. What do we call the 250th?
Well, it wouldn't be the tricentennial. That'd be 300, right?
Try and say it without twisting your tongue.
I'm looking forward to that one, Joe. I don't know about you, but I'm
so
looking forward to that.
So would we just say the tricentennial minus 50? Is that what we would call it?
Not quite. The semi-quincentennial. The semi-quincentennial.
Semi-quincentennial, yeah.
So we need to remember that
on
as we celebrate the 250th. It'll be the semi-quincentennial next year. It is going to be the most amazing celebration of patriotism in the last 50 to 100 years. And to Matt's point, we really need to consider the heroes who are buried here, who lived here in Lake County, Ohio, perhaps the most famous of which was General Payne, the man who founded the Paynesville Township, the city of Paynesville, and who has his name permanently memorialized by our seat for the county. So not quite as famous as Major Payne, I know, but General Payne is buried right here in Lake County, and the city of Paynesville is his namesake. And to celebrate that, a little less than a week from now, this coming Saturday at the Lake County Fair, the America 250 Committee is going to be sharing a limited edition General Payne bobblehead to the first almost 1,000 people to come through. So if you're a history buff, if you're from Paynesville, if you love learning about the Revolutionary War, this is a really special souvenir to have for the 250th. I recommend you get in line early. They're going to start distributing the General Payne bobblehead at noon in the History Building on the fairgrounds, and I don't think it's going to last long. I'm going to be lining up early to get mine.
So that's on July 4th of next year?
No, this year. This Saturday. So the semi-quincentennial, yes, that is the day next year. But the General Payne bobblehead is this coming Saturday at the Lake County Fair.
Oh, wow. Wow, didn't know that. You guys are celebrating early. Any last thoughts, Brian, on anything?
Yeah, this sounds very interesting. We'll stay on top of it. And Lake County Fairgrounds, we may think about getting our petition signed. There's going to be a lot of patriots there, and they'd be interested in abolishing property taxes, I'm sure.
Excellent. Well, I'll give you the last word tonight, Matt. You're a wealth of information. Really appreciate you coming on, and good luck with everything. What is your next goal, or are you happy where you're at with the magistrate, or I know you got a lot of talent there, so I was just curious if. You're not looking to run for politics, are you? Are you looking to run for politics? Yeah.
At this point, I'm looking to help our families and children here in Lake County through the Lake County Juvenile Court, and I want to get the word out about the story of Ohio and the story of America, and that's why I'm focusing on this legal research on the Ohio Constitution. Hope to share with your viewers that one of our law reviews throughout the the state of Ohio here picks up the article that I currently have drafted, and why I'm getting out the story of America and America 250. So again, as I said before, I think once people see what we have, that it's part of a story, both at the state level and the national level, that we have people who for 250 years in America have brought us to where we are today. And in the state of Ohio, since roughly that same time, even though Ohio didn't become a state until 1802, one of the reasons we fought the revolution was because in the French and Indian War, we had a lot of people, including George Washington himself, who had land title in along the Ohio River. They fought so that they could come here and settle in Ohio, and the British Parliament and King George prohibited that. So they were fighting for the right to settle here, and that this is something that once people see it as a story, understand the people, the human beings, the real life people who fought for this, who shared their ideas about this. Once they associate themselves with that story, I think they'll have a sense of gratitude for being both Americans and Ohioans, and we can really see our country and our state move forward with that sense of gratitude.
Oh, awesome! Hey, you're doing a fantastic
Joe,
job. Fantastic job.
Can I mention one other thing, Joe? I forgot to mention. I will be speaking along with Leonard and perhaps John Morrow tomorrow night with the Harbor Group in Eastlake. And the following week, we have speaking engagements down in Xenia and also in Marietta, Monday and Tuesday of the following week. So we're looking forward to talking to the patriots down there in the southern part of the state and educating them about property taxes and how they are the foundation of freedom and liberty. This is more than just property taxes. This is a freedom and liberty issue that we are addressing.
You got it. Well, Matt, thanks again. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have to have you on again. Keep giving us updates on all that America 250 and everything, and whatever else is happening with the Ohio Constitution. A wealth of information. Thank you very much. Give you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Get you the confetti. John, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
John.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Guys, take care. See
All
you
right,
around.
Joe. Thank you very much.
The games are done. The mask fell.